All right, thanks everybody for coming in today. Very cool to see very familiar faces here. Most of you guys already engaged with us for Microsoft Cloud, which is really cool. I wanted to first of all appreciate everybody, for being here and being our clients. So we put these things together for you guys and basically to continue to deliver on the top of that value proposition that we're going to be more than just a licensing provider. And we're going to provide value for you guys, share, exciting contents and new updates, and continue to do that good service there we are trying to do. So for those who don't know me, I'm Victor. I look after our Technology Solutions business unit at PB Tech. So we have multiple different areas that we specialized on: cybersecurity, cloud, virtualization, backup, end user computing, and all that. You name the category, we'll have somebody dedicated that has some knowledge around that to help our clients basically find out what's the best solution for them at that point in time, right? So just a little bit of what you can expect today. So I'm here with Craig, who is a Microsoft Solutions Architect. A lot of you are familiar with him. He's part of our licensing, benefit. So somebody that you can bring on to start the discussions around Copilot and a technology evaluation before you actually plan to go on that journey. He does more than only that. He does security, modern, all the tool sets under the modern work umbrella of Microsoft, Azure, and other categories as well. And we have here Ben, who is our very own AI consultant at PB Tech. So he's going to be sharing a little bit of his experience with Copilot up to this point. So Ben has been working for the last 2 or 3 years on Copilot Studio implementation and M365 Copilot implementation as well. So the idea of bringing Ben on board was basically listening from our customers that as part of the evaluation on implementing AI tools internally, sometimes it makes more sense for them to work with a specialized partner to actually help them deliver the technology implementation, all the milestones, the stress tests on the tools, and make sure that they have the right solutions internally, right? So PB Tech made the investment to bring Ben all the way over from UK to actually help us with that, and we wanted the right person to be, in our team when that makes sense for our customers, right? So we are moving a little bit off just helping you guys from our licensing side to evaluate and implement the technologies yourselves into having an option for you to work with if you choose to outsource some of these tasks to us, okay? I'll quickly hand over to Craig in a second. I just want to do one honorable mention that unofficially, because the numbers are not out yet, but we believe to be, that's all I can say, the biggest CSP provider in New Zealand now. So that's, thank you, Mark. So that's a great milestone for us, really. We started 4 years ago, and we believe we had the right value proposition to work with our clients and be a better licensing and cloud partner to the clients that we work with, right? And it's a big thank you for everybody that's in the room today that's our clients. You guys helped us get there and hold us accountable to continue providing a good service, because that's what we're here for, okay? In the end, Mark is going to step in. Mark, raise your hand. He's our GM of sales. Our head of MSP, Greg, couldn't be here today, but Mark's going to be covering some exciting stuff that we are doing on the services space that might float outside cloud as well. So, and then we'll wrap up after that, have some lunch, and continue our network.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. So good to see so many people come out and give us some of your time. PB Tech and myself from Ingram Micro, we really do appreciate it. So today, really, what I want to cover is just around the agentic piece. So the agents, we can build these agents in different places. We can build them within Copilot for Microsoft 365. We can build them in Azure. We can build them in Copilot Studio. So the idea today is really, hopefully, that when we step outside, that you've got a better understanding as to where to apply which service stream, which product, how we can utilize these agents within our organizations, and just give you hopefully a better understanding of where the product would be a good fit for whatever your use case is. So the use case is generally primarily the most important aspect of any agentic adoption within your organization. If you understand your use case, if you understand the business values that you're looking to achieve out of it, you're going to get a much better build from a technical perspective, and you're also going to have a much better understanding as what type of iterative versions do I need to change, what changes do I need to make, where do I need to adopt or change, and basically apply that technology to whatever that business value that you have identified in your business. So that use case, if it was me and my business and I'm sitting down and having a look at what I want to do with AI, I would spend a lot of time just making sure that I understand that use case, understand what to expect out of it, and what that business value, that tangible value is within your organization. So try not skip over that use case. It is really, really important that that gets fleshed out. So before we kick off on, I suppose, the agentic journey, I wanted to just touch on the various product sets over the or under the Copilot umbrella. So Microsoft has made some changes to their naming conventions, and I was just having a chat with one of my Microsoft colleagues earlier, and these changes come thick and fast, and it does make it a little bit confusing. So I'm hoping that basically this slide here gives us a good understanding of what products are under the Copilot umbrella. So the first one, and they're generally referred to as embedded copilots or embedded agents or first-party agents. And basically what that means is these agents are licensed on a per-user basis. So you would, for example, buy a Microsoft 365 Copilot license. That would be licensed on an individual basis, and that individual will then have access to that service to deliver a personal service on their behalf. It's not designed for sharing or using. It's generally around that individual purpose-built product. Now, the important part of the embedded piece is really around the knowledge. So when we talk about knowledge, we're talking about data that we're going to give these agents to be able to deliver either a piece of information, an action, or an automated task. All right, so the knowledge piece is really, really important when we're building these agents out. But by default, on the embedded side, we don't have full control over what gets added. And what I mean by that is if I use the Microsoft 365 Copilot licensed user as an example, if I add myself and I tick that license and I'm enabled now and I've got the license, by default, it's going to get access to everything I have within Microsoft 365 Exchange Online, SharePoint, OneDrive, etc. We cannot control that. We can control certain data sets within that. So maybe a SharePoint library we can exclude, but we've got very limited control over the default data that gets added. Now, from a, I suppose, hit the ground running or out of the box plug and play, very easy. We turn it on and off people go. But there is a consideration that has to be taken with regards to, is my data mature enough? So if our user goes and asks a question, is that agent, that Copilot agent, going to get good data out? If not, we're going to have to first look at the data side of things, look at the maturity aspect, look at the governance pieces around that, and basically ensure that all the data that that agent is referring to is accurate for what that business outcome or that business value that I've specified in my use case. So it's really important that we just realize that it's a great tool. It's very easy to configure. It's very easy to set up. But there is that consideration around default knowledge that we don't have full control over. So beyond the embedded, we've got what is known as solution accelerators. So if you've gone and you've used Copilot Chat, for example, that is considered a solution accelerator. If you went into Copilot Chat and you clicked on the agent store, and I'll show you guys in a second, you would see a whole bunch of different agents, Dropbox, Asana, you'll see things like Confluence. So all of these different vendors or OEMs build what are known as solution accelerators. And when you add that agent, it'll ask you for your username and password for your Dropbox, for example, And that agent would then interact with your Dropbox environment or your Dropbox folders, etc., and give you that feedback based on that. Now, these are great if you're looking to just utilize it for a product that you just want to have personally. Now, I've got a bit of a reservation around these, and the only reason I've got a reservation around them is from a shadow IT or a management perspective. You can imagine if you're utilizing 7 or 8 different products and you go and add an agent for each of those products, you're then going to be utilizing 7 or 8 agents only within that product set. So it's not very scalable. So again, when we're making that decision on what AI agent I'm going to be putting across my organization, we always got to think, how do I scale across multiple data sources? And what I mean by that is if I put an agent in today, can that agent read my Dropbox? Can that agent read my ERP system? Can it read my knowledge base that's sitting maybe not on SharePoint, but on a file share on-prem? We want to make sure whatever we put in today, we're able to scale with and move forward over the years. So solution accelerators, great, but just keep in mind that they are very siloed, and perhaps a decision would be made there within the business. Do we allow these to be adopted? Should we disable them, etc., which we can do from a policy perspective. On the far left or your far right, we've basically got custom agents. Now, this is where Copilot Studio comes into its own. Copilot Studio is designed for us to have a one-to-many approach. So we don't license this per user, we license this per tenant, and multiple users then engage with that agent that we have built. Now, that agent itself has 0 knowledge by default. So basically, we add the knowledge that we want it to use within the agent itself, which is a great way for us to start with a minimal viable product, add a couple of knowledge sources, get it going, then add the tasks or the actions and give it some more power, and then move into the autonomous piece where it actually does things without us actually asking to do so. So that really is from the ground up. You build it, you decide where it gets published. So from a channel perspective, you basically can publish it wherever you want, but it has no knowledge by default, which is, if that is important to you, so if you're not sure around the maturity of your data and you've got a small data set that you want to start with, then lean towards those custom copilots within Copilot Studio. So really that is what sits underneath the Copilot ecosystem or the Copilot brand within Microsoft. Now, from an agent's perspective, so if we licensed with those embedded Copilots, so if we bought a Microsoft 365 Copilot license, you are then able to create an agent in there, all right? That agent is known as a declarative agent, and basically what that does is it creates an agent that is generally used for a short term or for a specific task. Now, these agents that get created are created for the users. So you don't need to be a technical person to create these. You've basically got that license. When you say create an agent, it'll ask you what you want this agent to do. And you're able to add web URLs as well as documents that you have access to that agent. So from a creation perspective, you're pretty, I wouldn't say limited, but you've only got those options around what the data piece is. And that agent will work on behalf of you, answering questions, doing some simple tasks, etc. for you. All right. Fantastic tool for the users to be able to empower themselves from an agent creation perspective. All of that in the background is really done by Copilot Studio anyway. So Copilot Studio is the glue of this entire ecosystem. It's where everything really does happen and where all the nuts and bolts move. But from a user perspective, they're going to get an orchestrator. They're going to tell it what they want this agent to do. Copilot Studio in the background is going to build it, and they're going to utilize it. Now, these agents that you build as an end user can be shared with other users within your organization. So if you are maybe responding to an RFP and you've got a whole bunch of responses and you're saying, okay, cool, I've got all of this. Please make sure that I have covered everything that is required from this RFP response perspective. You would basically dump all of that information into that agent that you've created, share it with the other people that are also evaluating or building the RFP response out. And once that's done, you can basically decommission that agent. The kicker here is that if you build the agent on that side as a Microsoft 365 Copilot licensed user, whoever you share it with must also be a Microsoft 365 Copilot licensed user. We cannot share it with users that are not licensed for that. All right. So you can see from a knowledge perspective, we've got just fancy words for graph and connectors, which means we can connect to sources outside of Microsoft 365. So if you are utilizing Dropbox and not OneDrive, for example, we can connect to that. If you're using a file share that's sitting on a server within your office, we can connect to that as well. So we're not restricted only to the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. The actions piece, and this is key because it is retrieval only. So these agents that we're creating within the declarative piece is purely for a conversational, natural language experience. So you're going to ask it questions. That's going to give you some guidance, etc. And the channels, we can only access this through the Microsoft 365 chat window. So we can't publish this outside of that. It's going to sit within the Microsoft 365. Now, if we wanted to move to the other side, so say, for example, our requirement is less of that simplistic, let me just interact with you and you give me answers. I actually want to build an agent that's going to take an information, use it as a trigger, and then automate itself and do it itself without me asking to do so. Then we always lean towards these custom agents that are built on the right-hand side. So from a knowledge perspective, we've got a whole bunch of more features available to us. So things like RAG, which basically means that every large language model has general knowledge. So I'm sure you've all heard of the term hallucination that happens with these AI agents, or you ask it something. The reason being is it's almost like a good puppy dog that wants to make you happy. So if you ask it a question and it panics and has no idea how to answer it, it's going to make something up from its general knowledge. So to counter that, what we do is we basically build in what is known as RAG. And what RAG does is it takes its general knowledge and basically does a check on itself. And it will pull in data sources that you've tell it to use. So this is truth, this is truth, this is truth. And if it counters its general knowledge, it's going to give you the truth out of those other sources. So it almost does a check on itself before giving you the answer. So it's really important that if you're looking for that accuracy from a knowledge and a response perspective, that the custom side of things does really give you that feature. Whenever we're talking about autonomous tasks or other tasks for actions to give it, so if we, for example, want an agent to check our stock levels on a database or an ERP system, whatever it may be, if we want to do that automatically and we want to be able to check that and bring back an action to maybe make an order or replenish stock, we're always going to lean towards a custom agent to do so, because that's where we're doing all the task and autonomous piece of the agents. And then from where people access it from, a custom agent can be published literally anywhere. So we've published them on websites, we've published them in SharePoint, in Teams, in WhatsApp, in Telegram. You really can publish these agents anywhere you want. So depending on your use case and where the consumption is going to happen from, it might be a mobile device, it might be an iPad, it might be a laptop, whatever it may be, you can publish that to a channel that is easily accessible for the audience that you're building that agent out from. And that's why we mentioned that if it's in Microsoft 365 only, that's not very scalable for a public-facing agent, for example. So if you want to build something for your customers to be able to log in and track an item or ask questions, you're certainly going to be leaning towards the custom agent side of things. I have touched on this already, but basically the spectrum of the agents is we break it down into three things. What do I want to find? Basically, what do I want to retrieve? What do I want to find? These agents and these large language models do a phenomenal job in finding information very, very quickly. And that's why the knowledge or the data side of things is so important for an organization, because that organization needs to make sure that the users that we enable with this type of technology are not going to be able to find information that they shouldn't be. Because this type of tool makes life a lot easier for me to find things. Tasks, so what actions do I want to do? Do I want it to restart a server? Do I want it to create a server? Do I want it to create a purchase order, delete a purchase order? We can actually give them the power to do so on our behalf. And then on the far side where we actually automate this. So basically from a trigger, if that trigger is while we're low in stock on backpacks, and that triggers the automation, that automation will automatically order those backpacks without a human being actually being able to do so. So these are the basic three things that we do. It's what do I want to find, what do I want to create, or what do I want to automate? And if you can match your use case to one or all three of these, then I believe that you're going to be on a good footing with regards to designing that agent, having a chat to the PB techs, the Bens, and designing a good solution because you understand exactly what you want this agent to do within your organization. So just from an architecture perspective, or not even an architecture, just a high level, what it looks like. This is the declarative agent. So basically the orchestrator itself, only within Microsoft 365. So you're only going to see it within the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. It's got knowledge. So like I said, we get knowledge by default, but we can add other knowledge. And it's got a couple of skills that it can utilize. But the big kicker here is that it only has foundational models. So what that means is that Microsoft's adopted the GPT model within the Copilot or Microsoft 365 Copilot ecosystem. So ChatGPT is based on the same thing. It's that model that comes through from a large language model perspective. We can't change that. That is what the model is. We utilize whatever the model is, and right now it is version 5. That's what Microsoft pushed down with ChatGPT, but we can't change that. So if we have a use case that a GPT model is not going to be good for, because a GPT model is really good at being general. It's really good at everything. It's not a master of everything. So it's good at the conversational piece. It's good at finding information. But if you had a specific use case, for example, you're going to upload dimensions of a box, and this agent must be able to tell me how big this box is and how much square meters this box is. You wouldn't want to use a foundational GPT model for that. You would want to use a fine-tuned model for that. That fine-tuned model will understand what a meter or 2 or 3 meters is, whereas a GPT model will do a best guess for you. So you really want to decide again, is a foundational model good enough for me? Or do I lean towards more of a fine-tuned model? And if you do lean towards a fine-tuned model, this is where the custom agents really become very, very powerful for that solution that you have. You can see the orchestrator, up to you. Again, like I said, the orchestration channels, same thing. You can publish it anywhere. If you're ever talking automation, autonomy, lean towards the custom side of things. You're going to have a much better result than trying to automate using an embedded agent. And then at the bottom there, you've got foundation models and you've got fine-tuned models, so we can leverage those other large language models that we have. Also, the one nice thing about a custom model is we can turn off the general knowledge that that large language model comes with. So if we build a custom agent in Copilot Studio today, by default, you'll see a little switch, general knowledge is on. If you turn that off and you add one document that's got 3 lines in it and my dog's name is Jock. If you ask it any other question outside of what my dog's name is, it's going to tell you, I don't have an answer for you. If you put general knowledge on, then it's going to give you that happy puppy, I want to make you happy, and it's going to make something up, and this is where the hallucinations happen. So you really want to, if you want that control and you really want it to only answer out of the sources that you give it, we lean towards the custom and we disable that general knowledge that these large language models come with. This is just really a side-by-side comparison, I suppose, that I created. So the use case, declarative agents really is around Microsoft 365 Copilot and those focused scenarios. Like I said, it is an individual thing. So if you're thinking of building one agent for the entire organization, maybe not a good fit. Custom agents, more complex workflows and integrations. Sharing, again, used by individuals. Custom, we are using either groups, we are using public-facing, or specific business units. Customizations, like I said, the embedded or declarative agents, we can do very little from a customization perspective, but we can do a lot on the custom side. And basically, then the rest are already self-explanatory around that we don't have any triggers or automation on the embedded side, but we do have on the custom side of things. And the channels and the engine hosting, etc. But basically just a side-by-side, because we are going to share these slides afterwards, so everyone should have access to them, and just maybe you can, almost like a battle card for you to decide which one is going to be a good fit for you. Just from an orchestration perspective, on the left-hand side, this is the embedded copilots. We've only got that Microsoft window, and on the other side, we've got a whole bunch of channels where we can publish that. So before I jump into the next one, I just want to show you exactly what that looks like from a creation perspective. So basically from a declarative agent perspective, so when we are licensed Microsoft 365 Copilot user, we can come into m365.cloud.microsoft, and there's a little create agent option there for us. These are the agents that we can create for that personal basis that I spoke to, that RFP response or that RFP engagement that I gave you as an example. This is where we would come as an end user, so we wouldn't have to involve IT or involve anyone else to create this for us. And we would come in here and we would create this agent and give it the instructions, add the knowledge. So like I said, either URLs or we can drag and drop files that we have. There are a couple of things like if you want to generate images or if we're utilizing code and we wanted to basically give us guidance on how we are developing. But basically that's all we can really do from the agent piece. We create this and then this will be utilized by yourself or by your team for a specific purpose. So this is what when I'm referring to the left-hand side on the embedded piece, this is the agents that we can create within that. The middle piece, these solution accelerators, if we click on all agents and we scroll down to more agents, this is where you'll see all of the different solution accelerators that get built out. So there are thousands and thousands of them. Most of the large vendors have their own solution accelerator, and these are the ones that you can add specifically for your Dropbox, for example, and then attach your Dropbox to it. Like I said, they are great for specific purposes, but as maybe an IT decision maker or a company that's going to be managing these agents, this can quickly get out of hand with regards to how many agents you're actually deploying in your organization, because we want to stay away from that siloed approach for that. And then within the custom ones, we basically come in over here and we build out a custom agent. This is Copilot Studio. This is where we start with zero knowledge, build it from ground up, and this is designed for us to build one agent for many people to utilize and licensed as such. So that should make a little bit more sense as to where each one fits in within their different ecosystems. Are there any questions before I move on? Sure.
For the custom agents, for the database,
Mm-hmm.
does it need to be stay on the Microsoft ecosystem, or it can be called through the API?
Doesn't matter. So if you've got an Oracle database, Postgres database, or Microsoft SQL database, it has no bearing. What you can do is you can design the schema in the way that it actually interacts with your database. Just keep one thing in mind. When we're attaching databases, I might be getting into a bit of the weeds here, but when we're attaching databases, what happens is it doesn't form part of what is known as the vector index. So it's going to do almost a point-in-time call to do a check and give you back the answer. It's not going to understand your entire database and how they're linked and the relationships, etc. It's basically going to do a point of call and come back based on the schema that you have created for it. So, but any database is supported. It doesn't really matter. What a pleasure.
In terms of like data security and information, if you start teaching and opening up to like an AI agent, how encapsulated in your business was it available to everyone?
Great question. So Microsoft by default has a responsible AI, and they've also got a guarantee around your data not leaving the boundaries of your tenant. So none of your data is actually getting trained or getting used to train that large language model. It basically does an attach and redaction of it. So when you're asking a query on a specific data piece, so let's say it's a Word file, and you say, well, please summarize the following and make the following changes. It's going to use the large language model to come and bring that back, but that large language model actually prompt gets attached inside your environment to your document. Your document never leaves the organization. And that's a big difference between a lot of these public large or public AI agents that you have out there. Unless you use the enterprise grade subscription where they can. So I know Chat's got the enterprise grade now that you can guarantee your data doesn't get used. But your data will then be training a large language model if you're using those public versions. So
So the customized one stays with the
absolutely. It doesn't leave your tenant whatsoever. Yeah.
And how transferable are they from other providers? Like say if you bring it from another one into Copilot and vice versa, are they easily migratable?
Are you talking about the agents?
Yeah.
So again, another great, another great question. So it depends on the accessibility on where you've created this agent, and I'll tell you why. There's a new technology, well, not new technology, but it's basically called MCP, which is Model Context Protocol. And basically what that's going to be is an open standard for agents to share information across each other. All right, so you could be able to export that. So say, for example, you can export that agent. It should be able to export, if it's a mature platform, into what is known as JSON, and we can import that and no problem whatsoever. But say that's not capable. They could have an MCP endpoint, and that data that you have in there already, you could basically link this agent that you created in Microsoft Copilot Studio and link it with this data source over here and have them chat over that MCP layer, because that's what it's designed for. It's designed to be easily transferable information across different AI solutions. So you're going to see a lot more of these big companies having MCP endpoints, and it's going to be as simple as creating a username and password, or whatever. That'll be like a string text, and you copy that and paste it in each other, and they can actually start communicating with each other on that level. So to answer your question, it depends on the platform where you've created it. A lot of them can export, and they export to a standard format, or we can start using MCP to actually leave them where they are and chat to them. Okay.
Can you go over the cost for different databases that we use? For example, when we plan the architecture, if I decide to go with a SharePoint list or a Microsoft Word document, the token charges.
I'll get to that. Yeah, I cover that quite in depth. No worries at all. Any other questions? Cool. So the next couple of sections, I've basically built this out just purely putting different hats on within an organization. You might have an organization that has an IT manager, a leadership that'll basically buy into the idea. And then you're going to have a technical team that does the development of the agent, and then you're going to have the end users who actually consume the agent. Now, I'm very aware that lots of us wear these multiple hats, and we maybe do all three. But I just thought from I suppose, a sequential piece, breaking it out like that would just help with what each business unit or each person has to focus on. So from a leadership perspective, we've basically got a decision to make. Is chat within Copilot Chat our friend? Are we happy with that? Is that all we need? All good, we can utilize that. But even based on that, if we make a decision that, cool, we're going to be using Microsoft Chat because of the data protection it has, then as an organization, we also need to make sure that we are either via policy or via just communication with our end users saying that we're not utilizing any other AI platforms out there. The big thing is, obviously, we've all probably done it, uploaded a document into ChatGPT and said, hey, give me a summary of this. The problem that we have there as an organization is that intellectual property has now left your organization. You have zero control over it anymore. It's gone. Whether it's going to get used to give you a response or someone else a response or be abused with, who knows? Chances are maybe not, but you're still running that risk that document has left your organization and you've lost control over that document, basically. So just some food for thought there around make a choice as to how we're going to be utilizing AI, whether it's through the chat window and that's good enough for us, perfect, but we still want to try and policy and make sure we don't have hundreds of different platforms being used within our organization. If chat is not the right fit for us, we want to move into the agents piece like I just spoke about, then that's where we'll say, well, we're utilizing these agents. Again, we want to policy these and make sure that we're not using different agents in different ecosystems. And we do all of that through these IT controls. So within the Microsoft ecosystem, we are able to control these. We are able to whitelist or blacklist or sanction or unsanction different tools. So if we decide we're going to use X, we can basically unsanction the rest or sanction them and make sure that the users cannot utilize them or our data doesn't leave the organization. If we don't want to control the agent layer or the technology piece, then we have to also look at the data piece. And data is probably the hardest conversation that I have with potential customers is, so what's your data look like? No, my data's okay. I think it's okay. Cool. So do you have structure? Do you have metadata? Do you have sensitivity labels? Oh, no, we don't have any of that. Do you know what your permission structure looks like? Yeah, I think everyone's got access to everything, or we've got a couple of folders here and there that we restrict. That type of approach and overlaying something like this is where you're going to get data leakage that you don't want. So the data piece would have to come into play first, and this is where the likes of PB Tech and their managed service providing team can come in, do that analysis for you and say, okay, well, how mature are you guys? No, we have to do sensitivity labeling. So in other words, we'll either label everything with general, and then based on the content of the documents, then we'll auto-label that with, say, restricted. And as soon as it gets a restricted tab, we are able to tag it that AI cannot utilize that piece of data. So it's a super important part of this entire story is making sure that we understand if we're going to be using an embedded piece, that by default is going to get that knowledge, so we're going to make sure that we have controls over that knowledge as well. On the custom side, it's still a good idea. It's not as prevalent of a risk because we control what data we add. But even with that, you still want to make sure that you have certain controls around your data, especially if you're using personal identifiable information or anything that's very highly confidential, and you may have it within your organizations, patient data, that type of stuff. You want to make sure that you really have controls over that. I mentioned right in the beginning the use cases. So Ben's going to come up and he'll come up probably in about 20 minutes or so, and he'll give you some real life use cases. But just from a high level perspective, Microsoft do have a repository. That's where it is there at the bottom. And basically, they've got scenarios where you can go and have a read up of what they're utilizing or where they're utilizing these agents. And within that, you can maybe benchmark it or use it as just some creative ideas around how you can utilize it within your organization. It basically gives you a breakdown around different functions or business functions, operations, marketing, finance, etc. And as you dive deeper in there, it's going to give you a better look and feel as to how they're utilizing agents within those various fields. As a leadership, it's really, and this is one of the important parts, is these agents are not going to be a set and forget. These agents are going to be continuously updated, continuously made better. And the way that we make this better is by monitoring the usage, the adoption, and making sure that the users are actually gaining the value that we had in our use case right in the beginning. So if we've got a business value in our head and we say, cool, this is what we're going to be doing, and we push it out to the users, and then we call it a day, we have no idea what impacts that's having on the users. So we really want to monitor the adoption. Are the users utilizing it? If they are utilizing it, how many drop-offs are we getting? How many escalations are we getting or saying, no, I don't know, this is not giving me the right answer? And basically monitoring the effectiveness of those agents so we can make it better. So continuous improvement is very important within this game. This is really also another battle card. So basically, as we said, we'll share this, but it's really around what you can look at managing if you're going to be using the agent builder. Just by the way, I think it was a day or two ago, Microsoft changed the name of agent builder. It's now called Copilot Studio Lite. So you'll see that name now in the documentation. It won't be called Agent Builder anymore. So you're going to get Copilot Studio Lite and Copilot Studio. And then you basically can just utilize those links in there and look what you can manage from this. But we'll send these cards out. So that was from a leadership perspective. The next is really the people that are going to create these agents, whether it be the creations on the declarative side or the custom ones. But basically, we're going to make a decision using a very simple decision tree. And all that really talks about is, does the agent need a custom AI model? So like I spoke about those fine-tuned models. If it's a yes, we build a custom. Does the agent need advanced Microsoft Teams integration? So in other words, do you want to publish these agents to different Teams channels within your organization? So you might build an agent for HR, build a agent for finance. You don't want to publish the finance agent in the HR user pool. So you can basically publish these agents depending on the business unit, and each business unit has a custom developed agent that's specific to their business and makes sense to their day-to-day tasks. If we're looking for something like that, again, you want to look towards building the custom. And then the last ones is, do you want the autonomous piece around it? So the proactive messaging, the autonomous actions that we provide them. If you're ever thinking about automating something, you're always going to lean towards the custom agents themselves. So just from a what type of agent am I, this really just talks to the whole use case again. Once you've got the use case, the business value, the outputs that is expected by the business, you almost want to just classify this into what type of agent am I. Am I a researcher? Am I an ordering agent? Whatever it may be, it just helps us as builders to classify and make sure that that agent that you're building is fit for purpose and is doing its job. And the reason why this is important is because there is this best practice around building agents within a segregation of duties perspective. So we don't want to build one agent that does a whole bunch of things, because when we're versioning that and we're making those changes, the business runs far too much risk of it breaking, and then we've broken the entire system. So what we want to do is, for example, again, using the example of a stock checker, you basically want to build an agent that's going to do the stock check for you. As soon as that agent gets a response saying, oh, we're low on stock on backpacks, it's not going to place the order. It's going to pass that to the ordering agent, and the ordering agent will be the one that will make the PO creation. We segregate those duties so we can basically iteratively create different versions and make things better without breaking the entire tool set. And when we start building these agents, it's really a reverse pyramid. We always start with the basics first. So generally what we're seeing in the business in New Zealand, or they're starting with a knowledge base. So they might have a bunch of documents, whether it be safety standards, whether it be just general information on onboarding a new employee. We're generally seeing people start with the, what I want to find, what type of information do I want to provide my end users with? And that's the basics around where we start. Once we've refined that, we've got that working well, then we basically stack on them the more specialized piece where we give it actions. So think about the ordering action that I spoke about, and then the automation piece is the last piece. So we really want to make sure that we mature first on the basics, then we add the specialized, and then we automate the entire thing. So this journey is not a week's journey and we're done. It is really a journey that this thing will continuously grow with your business. And that's why it's really, really important that the decision you make, whatever it is, whether it's another third-party tool or Microsoft's agents, whatever decision you make today, make sure that you make that decision with a 3 to 5 year scaling plan. If I put that solution in today and my business changes revenue streams or service streams or products, can that scale with me as my business changes? And that's one of the most important things when you make a decision today around these agents. So coming to the costs. So from a declarative piece, it's really pay-as-you-go. You're paying that $582 per year per user. There's no real hidden costs in there. You've already prepaid that. That's what people are going to utilize. That is your Microsoft 365 Copilot license, for example. So nothing too much to be concerned about or just take into consideration. But when we're building a custom Copilot, things get a little bit more interesting. So Copilot Studio, for example, can come in two flavors. It comes in a standalone flavor, and it comes in a pay-as-you-go flavor. The standalone flavor, think of it as a old school prepaid cell phone minutes bundle. You're basically paying X amount per month, you're getting the minutes, and that's what you can utilize. All right. Those minutes in this are 25,000 queries per pack, all right? And you license that per tenant. Or you can move it to pay-as-you-go, where it will charge your Azure subscription for all the queries that you are doing. So if you prefer to move to that model and not have a predefined bundle, then you basically have that option to link an Azure subscription, and it'll charge you per query. Now, the billing rates is what makes it interesting. So when we're building out a classic answer, for example, and a classic answer is a predefined answer. So think about a question. I'll ask an agent, cool, what is the address of this company? The address is going to be printed out. All right. That is a classic answer because I've defined what the address is. But if I went and put my company's address in a Word document, for example, and I put that on SharePoint, the agent would bring back the address, but it's going to bring it back from a generative answer perspective and charge you double the query from your query pack than you would if you just put it statically. So when you're designing these agents as a developer, you really want to consider the billing rate and what is static information that is going to be repetitive, it's not going to change. If it's not going to change, then rather give it a classic answer to save on your query pack and just get a better return on investment from the money that you are spending on it. An agent action, so think about that action around checking my database for levels, reordering, those are all actions that I give it. It's 5 messages per action that gets delivered, all right? Tenant graph grounding messages, so these are messages that are sitting out of SharePoint, out of OneDrive, etc. We're grounding it, or we're using what is known as Microsoft Graph. We can bring data into what is known as a semantic index, and it basically gives us a much richer response around all the data pieces. From a design perspective, again, keep that in mind. If we're only going to rely on that, it's 10 messages per query. So you can see how we really got to think about how we're going to build out this agent so that we can get the best possible return on investment from our money. Now, to make it a little bit more complicated, if a user comes in from a licensed Microsoft 365 Copilot perspective, they're not going to get double charged. They've already been charged because they got the per user license. So you can see in the middle there, a lot of those are no charges for you because you are already a licensed Microsoft 365 Copilot licensed user. Again, we'll share these. So this is the cost. I hope that answers your question. It gives you a good breakdown as to how it works. But yeah, certainly from an architecture perspective, this is a super, super important when we're building out these agents to make sure that we're not having to stack on 3-4 different query packs and wondering where all of our queries or data is going. And then just from a business perspective, it's honestly really just allowing the users to explore with these. So it's really about having those use case or those users that can provide you feedback on the agent. So if we're building an agent out, and I know, like for me, for example, as a techie, if I put my techie hat on, I'll just go mad and build and publish it and then expect everyone just to understand it. And it doesn't really work like that because everyone's like, well, cool, this is a great agent, but how do I use it? How do I work with it? How do I provide you feedback? And those channels to provide feedback are super important to mature the agent with your business. If we're not getting feedback from the end users, and this is where the whole monitoring, adoption, usage comes in. If we're not providing them a mechanism to give me feedback, how am I going to make it better for the organization? So it's really around publish it in places where they're going to see it, they're going to use it, make it known, and make them feel comfortable with this. It is rapidly changing. It is a lot to wrap your head around from an AI perspective, but it is going to just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's not to scare anyone. I don't believe that if you don't have something in place today, you're falling behind. I believe you're in a great position because a lot of stuff that's been tried and tested as passed or failed, you can actually learn from that. So you build it slowly, be confident in what your use case is, and just provide those users the ability to provide that feedback. And talking about use cases, this is where I'm going to ask Ben from PB Tech to come up. He's got real life use cases for you, so none of this fluffy stuff. And I'm sure he's going to provide you with some great insights around what he has seen around the world. But thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate it.
Cool. Well, great to meet you all. My name's Ben Lewell. As the PB Tech team have just said, I joined them about a month ago. So we're here to be the driving force behind AI innovation in New Zealand businesses. I've been with the team about a month, but over the last 18 months or 2 years, I've been working with a global energy company and supporting them with their AI integration journey. So we thought it'd be a great idea today to take you through that journey. Sometimes it's quite difficult to bring to life what the experience looks like. When you're running your pilots, integrating AI for the first time, some of the often questions that we hear are things like, AI is a really scary technology. Where do I start? What's the first step I need to take in my business? And often it's about just getting those small, successful proof points into the business before you start to scale further. So today I'm going to share the story of this particular company that I've been supporting over the last 18 months. Hopefully it brings to life some of the ideas, both with adoption, but also with the agentic side as well, which is really exciting. There's so much power in Copilot Studio and other agent tools, but actually it's about, what use case do we pick first? What's that first stepping stone to get a run on the board, build the confidence, and then roll that further in our organization? So out of interest, who in the rooms, the company is sitting on Microsoft 365 at the moment? Yeah, great. So a good proportion, and I think that really sets up the foundations for unlocking true potential with some of this really exciting technology. With this particular company, they're doing, and I've had some conversations out there, something similar to a lot of you guys, which is starting small and successful. If you're already adopting Microsoft 365, one of the easiest steps you can take is to run a very small and simple pilot within your organization. So with this organization, they're a large global company. They chose 50 pilot users to give the Copilot license. So that's the integrated embedded one that Craig was talking about. This is the one that's integrated into your Office apps like Outlook and is specific to your end user. These 50 pilot users were from a cross-section across the business. So we don't want to just have 50 users that sit just in IT. You want to bring in a few from HR, a few from delivery, a few from ops, so that you've got that nice cross-section of experience to stress test the value of that pilot that you're running. Once the users are onboarded, one of the most critical and often overlooked parts is the upskilling and training journey. It's not just let's give Copilot licenses to your employees and then overnight they're AI geniuses and can unlock the full potential of M365. It's not quite like that. There's a real upskilling curve that's really essential here. So going through that few weeks journey with that pilot group to make sure that at the end of that period, you can actually determine the true value of the Copilot license. You want to ultimately understand, is this a worthwhile investment decision for my business, to then roll it out further. And if we can back that up with data and numbers, of course, that's going to help. So that comes down to step 3, which is about measuring the value. So at the end of that pilot phase, which Microsoft believes is actually around 11 weeks, they believe 11 weeks is that tipping point for your users to make those everyday Office techniques habitual. So of course you get the value straight away, but you need to just hammer in that value with continuous learning, continuous touch points to make sure the adoption's there. And only then can you stress test the true value of some of these tools. So this change period is essential for for you to actually assess that. In this case, the value obtained over that few-week period for this organization was between 5 and 10%. Now, if you extrapolate that as a dollar saving of business value, that's around $300,000 USD annually. And suddenly we've now got the insights to inform a very straightforward business decision. Yes, this is adding value. I think that works out at nearly a 20 times return on investment through the Copilot licenses. That can be time and energy spent in innovation, supporting other parts of the business. So that's an astonishing value saving, and when that is extrapolated, it's a no-brainer. So once we've built the confidence in the organization with some first steps with AI, naturally companies start thinking about what's next, and the natural one is, what about agents? So agents are a really exciting proposition. They really unlock an enormous amount of potential and power to how you can automate business processes in your organization, but they have to be done properly. With all of these, it's about doing quick proof of concepts to really test the value, to make sure they're actually doing what you want, that they're not going off and introducing lots of business risk. So there's a really good methodology that we need to follow to unlock that value. I want to bring to life some examples of case studies and use cases that this particular business did, just to hopefully get the creative juices flowing. And I appreciate some of you are probably at different stages on that maturity curve, but for this one, it's probably their flagship agent that they've created so far. So to set the context, they've got a scientific research repository that sits within their business. It sits on SharePoint, and within that repository, they've got 700,000 scientific reports. Now, the scientists are struggling. One of their big problems with accessing that SharePoint data is it's accrued over decades and decades and decades, so it's really hard for them to search properly, query that data, and they've got all that IP in there that they can't really unlock the value from. So it was drastically underutilized and very, very ineffective. So they wanted to see whether they could bring in an agent wrapper that sits around this SharePoint site that can bring some AI intelligence, contextual understanding to that data set. They implemented an agent that had natural language prompt so that those scientists could interrogate and query that data. And the agent can go off, extract the specific scientific reports from that repository, specific ones that meet certain evidence criteria, and maybe some other business criteria that they set. So you can set some really clear parameters around the agent. It then summarizes it for them, which is nice. Also provides some recommendations on what those scientists can do. And I really like this one, can even visualize through dashboards, integrating with some of the more advanced tools in your agents. So you can see that from a very clunky, manual, unused, resource pool of data, they were able to unlock an extraordinary amount of value. In this particular case, they estimate $30 million a year value gained in virtual SME value. So what that means is basically we've got our virtual scientific experts, which are represented by the agent, that our scientists can use. So I think that's an astonishing number. They also have $1 billion of IP sitting in that repository that they're not able to access. So by introducing this agent, they can unlock the true power of all of that IP, which I think is pretty astonishing. So I appreciate that's on a big scale, but the same principles apply to organizations of any size. You go through the same process, the same workflow of building these agents, understanding what your potent pain point is that you're trying to solve within the business, and going through baby steps to test it within your organization. So what about some other use cases that might be a little bit more applicable to your business types? Here are a number of additional use cases on the left-hand side. So 4 agents were created for each of these use cases. The first one we've got up there is compliance review. So if you have compliance processes in your organization, you can define agents that can support and automate these workflows. You can set criteria, principles, regulatory documents, compliance elements, frameworks that your business adheres to that can support that agent with the compliance review. So you can feed in your documentation, it understands exactly what it needs to do based on your business expectation, and then provide you with that response. Research, this could be legal research, company research, any market research, really. This is a really powerful one, as Craig was showing already. But you can really tailor these agents to bring back research based on very gated criteria. So it might be that you want to pull on public sources. Maybe it's a public paywall source, as well as specific areas of your internal data store. So with that, you can set up agents that can fully automate that process and summarize and return that report in the exact format that you're looking for. So relatively straightforward use case in principle, but can unlock a good amount of value, but importantly also mitigate risks that you're missing things that the contextual agent can actually pick up. Contract generation. So if you're drafting contracts, NDAs, legal agreements, very common activities that we do in our business, often it's rinse and repeat, but we want to be drawing on learnings from contracts we've drafted before, from previous templates, but you might also want to draw on specific queries or document sets that might inform how your contracts are drafted. So you can set up agents as well that can really streamline that process for you. And due diligence. Maybe you've got a huge document set that you need to run some due diligence on. We can set up stringent agents that can ultimately identify the legal risk, identify the red flags, summarize the response from the due diligence, and also provide clear recommendations on what you need to do to take that further, who you need to ask, which parts are exposing potential risks, and recommendations on how to address those. So with the other columns that you can see there, the number of tasks, as you can see, this was a fast proof of concept. So this isn't a huge engineering effort. This isn't bringing mass manpower and resources to try and get these things to market. We're leveraging all the stuff that Craig's just talked about to stress test these and get them into the company and test them quickly. So they all followed very fast proof of concepts. The number of tasks, so this is each time the agent was run as part of the proof of concept. The time saved, so the total time saved for each of those agents overall. And I think the most important column is this one on the right-hand side, which is the percentage time saved from doing the task manually compared to doing the task with the agent that was created. And I think those are quite astonishing figures to see that on average, that's about a 58% time saving, which is an enormous dollar saving for any business, which can be taken into other efforts in the organization. So some really exciting stuff there. We really are touching the surface with some of these use cases. I think the challenge with building agents is where to start. It's really hard to know in your sector, in your industry, where do I start, where can I get the most value? And I think either learning from other companies in your industry or coming and having a chat with teams like us so that we can support you with making that decision and what might be a good first step. And finally from me, some of the key insights that I've certainly seen over the last 18 months, which I thought were worth sharing. And Craig's alluded to some of these already, so I'm going to just reinforce this. So it's really important to develop agents successfully. A really good methodology to follow is to crawl first, so as we've been talking about, experiment with some very small, quick proof of concepts that you can stress test in your business straight away. Not try and overcomplicate or go for the big fish early. Try and find one that you can just test first of all. Then walk, so we can start to integrate business processes into our agents and introduce a little bit more complexity and go through really fast feedback iteration loops so that we can understand, is it going to work or is it not? If it's not, let's pivot and create a new agent and move on. We don't want to be wasting time, money, and energy on things that aren't really going to be embedded in the business well. And then if they are successful, we can scale that eventually. We can push that out to our business so we can unlock the true potential of those agents. My second there is training up champions. So as I've stress tested at the beginning of this piece, we don't just give agents to our organizations and suddenly the adoption is brilliant. That's rarely the case. We need to really nurture the audience through the entire process. One of the most successful ways I've seen this done is by introducing change champions that sit within your business. These are individuals in the company that can advocate for AI. They're the vocal individuals shouting about AI and supporting and mentoring their colleagues. So I think that's a really important role to think about as you're starting to bring these agents in. What's your internal governance structure? Who are these stakeholders and entities in your business that can really help drive it forward? So as I say, 11 weeks, bear that number in mind. You need to support your audiences, pilot groups, and full organizations over that to maximize embedment. And last one there, and I've touched on this before, learning from similar companies is a really straightforward way to understand what agents could work, what's working well. Others may have already gone off and achieved good value with some agents that might be applicable to you. So have conversations with your peers as well. As Craig showed, there's lots of resources online of great use case catalogs for your sector and industry, so do have a look at those. And certainly come and have a chat to us because we've got lots of good ideas that I think we can help with as well. Cool. All right. So, yeah, that's it. I don't suppose you guys have got any questions, either myself or back for Craig and the team.
Question for Craig. The message that you mentioned, how does the system calculate one message for cost? For example, if I send a prompt and the system replies, is that one message?
So yeah, that's one message from a user perspective, but again, depending on where it gets classified as, so where it gets the data from. Is it an action? Is it a response? Is it a classic answer or a generative answer? That's where it'll calculate the cost for you. And you can actually see all of this in the analytics dashboard. So you can actually go and see, oh, why are we blowing out 100,000 credits on people asking, like I said, what our telephone number is? And it's because it's finding the information in a Word document sitting on SharePoint rather than. So you'll be able to basically see what's been answered as classic, what's been answered as generative, and all the actions. Any other questions?
Going back to that, I saw on the slide before it said that there's no charges for certain messages. Can you explain more about that?
Yeah, so basically, depending on how you're licensed, so if you are a licensed user, you'll have no charges for those. And anything that's public responded, so in other words, it's not your grounded data, it's not an action that you set up, it's the general knowledge that the large language model has, there is no answers for that. There is no charges for those at all.
And that's included in the Copilot Studio agent?
Correct. But I generally, this is me personally, every single time I create an agent, I disable the general knowledge completely. But if you left it on and they answered via the public sources, they wouldn't charge you for that.
Okay, so I'm not going to take too much of your time up. So we've actually got Greg here and Michael from our MSP team. If you need to, I'll maybe give you what we're doing at PB as an idea of why we're growing this team. So we're trying to be the best MSP in New Zealand. Yes, we think we're going to save you money, but we're using a lot of these tools that we've talked about today to try and drive the cost and bring up the response. The guys have done a great job now. We've been working on it for about a year. We've signed up about 14 customers, and I thought, oh, that's not enough. But I've been, since when I went and talked to another person, he said, no one signed up 14 customers this year. You're doing a great job. So I think we've got some great reference sites now, but just from a customer point of view, if you think our MSP goal is to be the best MSP in the marketplace, and also to drive some of the cost out of it. Look, we're looking at agents on our service desk to try and maybe get rid of the level 1 kind of support and have that as an agent so we can put smarter people at level 2 and level 3 and invest there so we can provide a better service, because there's a lot of historical MSPs out there now running the same models, and we just don't want to become another MSP like that in the market. We really want to be the leading MSP. So that's the philosophy driving that team and the challenge that Greg and Michael have got. And they hear me talk about to them daily, so they're really stoked that I've just said it again. With the AI stuff with Ben, look, this is where our investment as a company is going to be pretty heavily in the next 6 months to help you do your proof of concepts. Ben's already working in clients now, as he spoke about. And, you know, there is some complicated stuff around the licensing, but you can lean on us for the proof of concept, make sure your agents are right, and grow this business. So we're having a bit of lunch afterwards, so grab Ben or Greg and have a chat. But, you know, we want to bring senior AI resource into New Zealand so that you guys can benefit. You see Oracle's price nearly doubled this week, and, you know, and that's all based on their AI adoption that's coming up and what they can see. So, you know, I think we all had a bad experience when Copilot first came out. Everyone gave the agents out. Everyone went straight back to ChatGPT or Grok or whatever you're using, and they kind of didn't use it. So at PB, we've got a big adoption. So it helps in our service desk. We put the summarize now in all our 365 emails. So if you're a user, this is just to kind of get everybody using it inside of our environment rather than going off and pasting it into Grok or ChatGPT. Now they can summarize within 365. So if they come to an email chain late, they can pull that together for them. And that's trying to keep them in the environment. You know, just something really easy to get them to use it. But we use it in our warehousing for all our stock and management now as well, our ticketing, some of our sales analysis. But, you know, so it's great to, and we're happy to share what we're doing. If you want to come and have a look at it, come and see our support team and see how they use it. A lot of it's actually not about making our overall service better, but it's about lifting our B players up and bringing that to a more consistent level, just giving them that information, because, you know, your top players are great. But sometimes, you know, we've got a big team in procurement. You've got about 15 guys in our procurement team, and they're not all at the same level, and this helps just lift up our B players and give a more consistent answer. But I won't go on. I just maybe a quick thank you for coming. Please give us feedback, because, you know, part of this community that we want to build is the same thing with our MSP. We want these communities to come together so we can work shoulder to shoulder to build the best services, to build the best licensing team. And it is exciting that we're #1 now, nearly. And you know, but this is not just because we're cheap. It's because we want to add real value, you know, and we want to bring customers together so they can share what they know, and we can grow that community and be awesome, you know, and we 100% need that feedback to do that. But so big thank you to everybody who's turned up today so to make this happen, and well done team for organising it, and please grab someone at lunch if you want to have a chat with them, and because they're all here for your resource. All right, thank you very much.